Welcome everybody to the final AIRR-NA Wednesday webinar of 2020. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the college essay, and my name is Maggie Cardosi. I am the North American Officer for University College Cork in Cork, Ireland, and I'm joined here today by two wonderful colleagues who I'll let introduce themselves. Alana, do you want to go?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Stuart. I'm the Regional Manager for the USA as well as Canada for the University of East Anglia, which is located in Norwich, England.
And my name is Herbert. I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Admission based in North America for Franklin University, Switzerland.
So thank you guys again for joining us today. We're going to take you through a little bit about the college essay as it pertains to writing your essay for international schools. So Alana is going to be talking a little bit about the UCAS system. Harry's going to talk about writing your essay for American schools abroad. And then I'm going to take Ireland and pretty much everybody else. But as I mentioned, today is the last of our Wednesday webinars put on by AIRR-NA, or the Association of International Regional Representatives in North America. We had quite a season with a lot of different topics, which if you missed, you can head to our website and view those at your leisure over the break if you're feeling like you don't have enough to occupy your time. In the new year, we're actually going to be announcing some new webinars to focus on some other topics that we feel might be interesting to you as you explore the option of going overseas for your international education, or for your college education rather. So with that, we'll kick off and head to the first topic.
All right, so we'll start off with the American universities abroad and what the essay topics and process is like. So very briefly, the American Universities Abroad essay is going to be basically the same type of process and program as what you'd see at any other American institution based in North America. So we're going to go over some of the basics as to what that looks like. And you can see here from the overview, basically, the thing to keep in mind is that the essay is one of the integral parts of the application experience and the application itself. So basically, we want to take into account who you are, and we want to hear your voice, and I want you to basically tell a story as we're going through all of these things. So the next several slides will have into it several tips, things to keep in mind and consider as you're thinking about the essay for an American institution. So some do's. Keep some of these things in mind as you're progressing through your process here. It's important to tell a story and not really have a list of things or just look through the thesaurus and look up some big words. It's important to have a topic and stick to it. This is a part of the process to basically hear your voice and to once again tell a story. I'm going to say that quite a lot here. And the reason why is because it is a part of the application process that allows us to get a little bit better of a picture of who you are, where you're coming from, your skills and experiences, and being able to tell us more about who you are rather than just what we see on things like the transcript or the test score. So here you can see some tips. First of all, one of the things I like to mention is don't procrastinate. It's important to begin the process of writing the essay as soon as possible once you've considered where you're going to send your applications. And it's also important to have other people proofread it. And you want to put your best foot forward with regard to the essay, and it's important to make sure that you take out any egregious grammatical errors and typos and misspellings. So you want to put your best foot forward when you're submitting your essay itself. It's also important to stay on topic, to pick one of the topics that will help you figure out what you're going to be writing about and stick to it and write a story about it. And it's also important to really hook the reader in, because we read thousands of these types of essays. It's important to really put your best foot forward and using things like action words and putting yourself and drawing us into the experience. Some do not. These are important things to keep in mind as you're going through once again. Avoid cliches, avoid quotes. We want to hear your voice and not that of others. Don't write a resume or a list of things that happen to you. You start to get a little bit watered down in what you're trying to say, particularly because there is a word limit to these essays. You have to be concise. You have to really pick a topic and stick to it. Avoid using text, speech, slang. You're submitting an essay to be considered for admission to an institution of higher education. So it's important to really look at this as an opportunity to tell a story, but also to take into account the fact that you want to submit this type of thing as if you would be doing so for an academic course that you would be taking. If you're writing a resume or including things that we could see elsewhere, you're really not doing yourself justice, because we're going to see that in a different part of the application. So it's important to really pick something to talk about that we won't see elsewhere. For example, if you're going to be talking about some things that happen to you that are going to be in the section for your extracurricular activities, then you're just going to repeat yourself and you're missing out on an opportunity to really, once again, put another good step forward in the application process. It's also important to stick to one specific moment or one specific story, because if you list, this happened to me my first year, this happened to me my second year, my third year, and so on, then you're really not getting a good sense as a reader for these applications and essays as to what the skill sets of the writer are, and also you're not really getting a good sense as to the story and experiences and what you've learned from those particular areas of or ideas. So some common myths and mistakes that we see are, well, there's a lot of them, but here are some examples. A big pet peeve for many admissions representatives is to see, for example, an essay with a different college's name on it. So it's important to keep in mind what essay you're writing, and if you're including the names of the institutions. For example, we've seen many times in the past things like, I'm excited to apply to Franklin University, Switzerland, but instead of that, they might write a different institution's name. So avoid things like that. Make sure you're reading and rereading your essays that you're submitting to each particular institution, especially if it's for an essay as to why are you applying to this particular school. So a big red flag pops up if you have different names for those types of things. It's also a common misconception that the essay is not, doesn't really matter in the application process, that I can just get in on my GPA and test score. Well, in some cases that may be true, but let's basically say, like, there are two major forms of application review process: the holistic review and what I like to call the grid system. And in the grid system, like for example, a large public institution in the United States, you may be able to see GPA and test score on a chart and see if you're going to be admitted. But most institutions will require a holistic review, which we'll talk a little bit about in the next slides. However, the essay is important. It once again tells us more about you, and it's one of those things that we take we take a lot of energy and effort in reviewing. So we really want to make sure that we're taking into account the whole student. Basically, just keep these things in mind as you're progressing through your time writing your essay. And so I'd mentioned that this is a significant part of the application review process. We spend a lot of time on these types of things, as much as we can, considering lots of the time restraints that we have, but average about a third of the time for the application review reviewing the essay. Now, I briefly mentioned holistic review and sort of what I like to call the grid system. And here's an idea as to what holistic review is. It basically takes into account everything involved in the student, their experiences, their training, and what they're going to be presenting themselves with for admission consideration. And so here's an idea as to some examples as to weight that's placed in certain areas for the application itself. And you can see there that the essay is strongly taken into consideration, alongside things like what types of classes did you take? Did you spend time challenging yourself? What did you do both in and out of class? So your extracurriculars are going to be taken into account, your letters of recommendation, and so on. So we really want to get the full picture for the student and who they are and where they're coming from, and the context of their academic and social experiences while reviewing the application for the holistic review process. And so I'd mentioned that there are several different types of prompts for essays. Here are some examples for schools that are on what's called the Common Application, which makes it easy. It's very easy to find these things. If you don't have the time to take notes on these now, you can just Google them. But it gives you an idea, for example, of number 3, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea, and what prompted your thinking and what was the outcome. So we can use these types of prompts as a platform to develop the ideas that you're going to be writing about and really focusing on telling that story.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about essay writing as it pertains to Irish universities. And, you know, there isn't, I think, an easy blanket statement for, you know, writing for Irish universities, because not all of us require an essay as part of the application process. Some do and some don't. For example, the university that I work for, University College Cork, does ask for a personal statement, whereas, for example, I think Maynooth University does not look at personal statements. So really the thing to remember is, and really to save you time and effort, is to consult each of our universities individually and really read what the entry requirements state. So, you know, make sure that if you're taking the time to craft an essay, that you're doing it for a university that's actually going to read it. And one tip that I would say, you know, for schools that do require this personal statement type writing piece is that it is more of a personal statement, or rather than a creative writing piece. So we want to hear a little bit more about your experiences and, you know, what has led you to choose our university or a particular program in that university. I usually advise students to treat it like a cover letter for a job application. We want to hear about your experiences and why you're going to be a great fit for us. Next one, please, Alana. And a couple of kind of tips from what I've seen as I've reviewed essays for both for admission and for scholarships is to number one, really take your time and answer the prompt. Be clear and concise in your writing, and you know, really answer what we're looking for in those questions. Like I said before, it's a really good idea to think about, you know, what you've done, whether it's academically or extracurricularly, that have led you to choose a particular degree path or the school in general, because it's likely that you know, your essay is going to be read by a faculty member or you know, somebody who's an expert in the field that you're potentially applying into. And always when you're talking about why you're interested in a particular program or a university, give a concrete example. You know, try not to be vague, like talking about how Ireland is beautiful and green, which it is, and we're very proud of it, and we're so glad that you want to see us and come and study with us because of that. But we're really more interested in your academic background and your experiences, rather than what we already know about our country. And also, again, and Harry touched on this, and I'm sure Alana is going to touch on this too, but proofread your work. Nothing is going to put you at the bottom of the pile faster than if you accidentally slip in the name of another university into your essay. So really check your writing, and you know, make sure what you turn into us is something that you can be really proud of. Cool. And since Ireland is pretty short and sweet, I'm also going to wear my my general AIRR-NA hat and talk a little bit about what some other countries represented in the AIRR-NA group would be looking for. So Australia and New Zealand, those universities, super easy, no essay required. Canada, somewhat similarly, generally there's no essay, but I think similarly to Irish schools, there may be some programs or, you know, one or two universities that may look for shorter like essay responses or personal statements. But typically in Canada, they're focusing on your grades from junior and senior year rather than your essay response. And then for EHL, which is a Swiss hospitality business school, again, similarly to the other universities that I mentioned, the admissions is based on your scores, and your essay is going to be more based on the program you're applying to, which is going to be a hospitality-based program. Other schools in Switzerland typically wouldn't require an essay. So I think why, similar to what I talked about in terms of Irish schools, why you're choosing to study at EHL, what led you to choose that, that school, and why do you think it's a great fit for you, what you're looking for in terms of your career objectives and how studying at this university is going to help you, and kind of what you think is interesting about the hospitality fields. And all of this information too is going to be available on our different schools' websites, which you can find through the AIRR-NA membership directory. So if you want to follow up on different country systems outside of Ireland, then you can find us there. But I'll hand it over to Alana to talk about UCAS.
All right, I'm the slide advancer, so I apologize to those slide advances that were a little bit slower on there. If you click off it, it doesn't advance quite as easily. So yeah, I'm here to talk about UCAS, which is the University and Colleges Admission Services. It is the kind of, if you want to think about it, like the common application for all UK schools. So the schools within England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. I believe the vast majority, if not all of them, are on the UCAS. There is a personal statement that is a required part of it, and the UCAS personal statement goes to all the schools to which you are applying. So you do have a limit of 5 of those, but whatever personal statement you do write, it will go to all of them. So I'm going to reiterate some of the things that Maggie as well as Harry have stated, but in general, there's going to be, again, some key things that we just want to push home with you too. So with the UCAS, Harry mentioned a lot of these personal statements or essays are pretty short. So with the UCAS personal statement, you do have 47 lines of text or 4,000 characters, whichever comes first. So again, that's a pretty limited amount of time to be getting this point home. So within that limited amount of space, what should you be focusing on? Kind of what portions should go where. We say about 70 to 80% should focus on that academic achievement and work experience. So again, very similar to those Irish schools, we're looking at a very, very focused, pragmatic essay. We're not looking for a piece of prose or creative writing that you're going to have. We want to know those concrete examples, or what we call demonstrated academic interest. So that's why you want to go into what you're going into, what you have done to prepare, and potentially even what you want to do afterwards with that degree. It's okay if you don't know that right away, but that is, that is kind of one of those things that we might want to hear about if you do have a good idea of what you're going to go into afterwards. And then that last remaining part, you're going to talk about your self-interest and any extracurricular activities. Now, caution here is that they usually should still be related to what you want to go into or how that's going to help perform at the university level. So we don't just want you to throw in at the end kind of a laundry list of everything you've done. Again, you want to keep it similarly related to what the rest of the essay is talking about. So within this, what do we really want? So there's a couple of things. Sorry, I'm just bouncing my screen back and forth as so I can see the different parts. But we want you to talk about why that course specifically. Within UCAS, you're going to be applying directly to a course or a program, not just in general to the university. So you need to talk about why that course, why that major, and what about it interests you. We also want you to talk about your experience. So again, what you have done within that field. Maybe you've taken advanced or honors courses in that. Do you have a job that's related? Maybe you volunteer somewhere. You're into, natural resources and you volunteer at a park doing, hike explorations with young kids and teaching them about nature. Again, we kind of want to see that, and we want to see your skills related to that career pathway. And so that interest, what makes you you? What makes you unique into wanting to go into that field? Everybody has their own individual story. So again, this is where we want to hear that, and you need to really have your voice shine through. Again, career plans, it's okay if you totally don't have an idea, but if you do have an idea of what you might want to go into, mention that here. Do you have plans for a gap year? Some students may be taking an extra year after high school graduation prior to their study. We do want to know about that and what your plans are during that gap year. And if you intend to do something that might better prepare you for your studies, or if you're planning to gain a job or employment to maybe help with funding, we do want to know about that. And then finally, if you do have any gaps in study, and this is during high school, or maybe if you apply a little bit after, we do want to know about any gaps in study, and please explain those to us. I've worked at a university before having to play detective with transcripts that don't necessarily line up. It's a lot easier if you explain these things to us, because trust me, again, having worked within that, I know that they will be discovered, and we will pretty much piece together everything if we have to, but it's a lot easier if you're just open and honest with us from the beginning. So again, within that last 20 to 30%, when you're talking about, maybe not so much heavily focused on that degree area and your demonstrated academic interest, there are certain transferable skills that we might be looking for, but we don't just want you to say that you have these. You have to contextualize them for us and talk to us about how these are going to help you in your university career and kind of how you've honed them throughout your high school experience. So, maybe you've been involved in multiple things that just taught you very much about time management. So, that's going to help you when you get to the UK in terms of managing your course scheduling, your study, your outside of class studying, also making sure you have time to join a club. You can talk about multitasking, how you're good at doing multiple things at one time. And maybe you learn that, from having to maybe take care of a younger sibling or an older adult maybe in your life and having to do everything else that we know you have on your plate, especially now during COVID. I think there's a lot of that going on, that multitasking. So again, just explain those to us. Again, you don't have to have all this, and these are just examples of those transferable skills that we could be looking for you to have through that UCAS personal statement. I always think it's useful to hear from the admissions tutors. So within the UK, usually there's the representatives, the recruiters, and then there's also the admissions tutors who are actually doing the reading of the essays. So we're usually under the same department, but we're not always the same people. It does depend on the university structure though. So these are actually taken again from those admissions tutors who are the people who would be reading your essays. So these quick fire questions, they are from a sampling of universities across the UK. When should I start? So it says, and I hate to read these to you, but just in case there's anybody who's visually impaired, I'm going to go ahead and read through these. So again, I apologize to you in advance, but when should I start? And it says, quote, set yourself a schedule. It will take longer than you think to write your personal statement, and it is important that you allow time to review your work several times. So this can mean in a lot of cases starting the application in the summer before your senior year, or just making sure you start maybe more than a week before the deadline that the college application is due. Question number 2, what are universities looking for? And someone from the University of York said enthusiasm, motivation, and focus about the subject you're applying for. Mention extracurricular activities, transferable skills, and include what your future plans are after the degree. So again, a lot of those things that I had mentioned previously. Question number 3, how should I structure my personal statement? So this individual, Amy Smith, is suggesting you make notes and then put your notes in order according to what course you're interested in and what they're looking for. If you have any skills and experience relevant to the entry requirements, make sure you say so at the start of your personal statement. So again, it's very important that you kind of get that out of the way and make sure that kind of the bulk of your kind of qualifications are very much at the beginning of that personal statement. So what should you do after you've written? And to not sound like a broken record after Maggie and Harry, but check it carefully. Get your teachers, friends, partner, work colleagues, or someone else you trust to read it out loud to you. It's a great way to spot errors and make sure it makes sense. That's someone at Nottingham Trent And then a second person said, don't forget to save an up-to-date copy somewhere. This is very important for everybody. Don't always rely on autosave. Make sure, you have something backed up to the cloud. Obviously, we'd hate to have you lose something. If you are invited for an interview, your personal statement is likely to be read by the person interviewing you and may be used for a starting point for questions. Make sure you can remember what you wrote and back it all up if you are asked. So that's the other thing too. Again, if you are asked to interview at any one of our universities, they may utilize what you're writing. So it's very important that you're writing it and that you know what you're writing in it. And again, can knowingly talk about everything that you've added in. What other advice do you have? And then finally, this last question. Remember, you have a lot to offer. I'm sure all of you do. You just have to write about yourself in a positive way and sell all the skills and experience that you have. So, if you're applying to any one of our universities within AIRR-NA, we expect that you are going to have a lot to offer us. You just have to make sure that you're explaining that very well to us, because again, we're not going to know it unless you tell it to us. So this is the chance within the essay to make sure that you tell us. These are actually specific to UEA from our admissions tutors, but just to kind of our insider's guide. So these are kind of funny. So it was a pleasure, although a surprisingly rare one, to read a statement where the candidate's voice comes across clearly. Be yourself. So, being that authentic person is, again, very important here. Don't try to sound like somebody you're not. Again, don't over thesauricize like Harry has said. Again, make sure it's authentic, not too informal, but also making sure that your voice comes through. This next one is for UCAS a little bit different. So if applying for different subjects, ensure that all the subjects are covered in your statement or submit a separate personal statement. This is important for UCAS. Students should be applying to courses, but if you don't, you might want to split up your essay, which is already very limited anyways. But if you can also reach out to the individual university and see if they will allow for a second personal statement if it's a different subject area than what is on your UCAS essay, your UCAS personal statement. If you have any questions about that, let me know. But also, so the next quote is, we want to see an active, well-rounded individual, not just a good academic. So again, that goes into your extracurriculars and those transferable skills. And then finally, I use a personal statement to get a sense of an applicant's personality, their interests, and how motivated they are. So that kind of, those two quotes kind of mirror each other there. But again, we don't just want you to be saying, I did X, Y, Z. We want you to contextualize it and make it very personal. And then finally, we have a little bit of the do's and don'ts as well. So do be reflective on your experiences. Mention authors, writers, and artists, but we don't want this to be forced from you. So if you have very great examples of somebody who has impacted you, especially if you're going into English Lit, creative writing, art history, art even, then go ahead and mention these. We don't just want you to throw out a random quote, because actually that can be one of those, those essay examples that we see quite a bit, is talking about a quote and how somebody has influenced them. And that's not necessarily what we're looking for the UCAS. But again, if you do have any authors that have particularly sparked your interest, then we do want to hear that. But again, not in a forced manner. Spell check, read through, and then be clear. We don't have time, and the admissions tutors don't have time to read between the lines. They don't understand what you mean. They're not going to understand what you mean. So they just want you to be clear and concise as possible. Don't mince your words there. So, and then the don'ts, again, don't mention a specific institution. On UCAS, it is going to 5 institutions, or whichever institutions you apply to. So it'd be very bad for us, for example, if you mention University of Essex, but you're also applying to University of East Anglia. UCAS checks for plagiarism, and this is for all of us too. Please do not plagiarize. That's going to get you into a lot of trouble, and probably an automatic reject from a lot of us. So please just make sure it is your own work. Don't lie or exaggerate or get anybody else to write this for you. If you are working with somebody, don't let your parents write it. Again, we can usually tell when it's not the student that is writing it, and that can get you into a lot of trouble too if you do end up going on to an interview if it's required. Again, if you can't back it up and we find out that it's very very easily, not you that has written it. And then don't provide negative reasons or examples. But if you do this, say you've had something negative impact you in your life, because we do all have those stories where it has made somebody have a different or a career path because of, again, something negative they've experienced. Just make sure that you balance the positive and the negative. I think that's the key there. Don't be overly negative, because they're not going to want to read that, and they're not going to think you're a very positive person that's going to be suited to go overseas and adjust to the life overseas there. So I think with that, that's really the bulk of what we have to say. A lot of it was quite the same. International universities, with the exception of the American universities abroad, which do follow a bit more of the American pathway, not too shocking there, are going to be looking for a little bit more of that academic focused essay, I think, in general, and very much why you want to go to their institution. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A box at this time, and we will be going through those for you. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be individually for one of us or for all of us too.
Yeah, there's already one in here, Alana, and it references UK universities, but I'll read it out. How are UK universities amending, if at all, the application process, given that many US students have been unable to take standardized ACT or SAT tests as test centers have canceled test registrations? So can you talk a little bit about, from a UK perspective, how SAT and ACT has been handled this year?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I did have a really great response. I even had a colleague give me applause, and I wish I would just have that so I could play it back for everybody. But the UK is not a centralized, it doesn't have a centralized requirement. So within that, every university has a very different requirement for what they're looking for. For example, at University of East Anglia, we have never required ACT or SAT of our students. And I think you'll find that universities kind of offer a variety or a buffet of options to students, where they can say, hey, you can have 3 AP exams, or you can have an ACT, or you can have an SAT. And some universities will even take SAT2s or SAT2s in lieu of those AP examinations. So again, there's a wide variety of options there that are built in. I do know some have opted to go test optional for this year. We all do know that we need to be more flexible with COVID and the restrictions that have been in place, with testing centers and a lot of them being canceled. So if it does come to the end of the school year, and by that, we mean July time, and a student hasn't been able to take any type of standardized test, they would want to be in contact with the UK universities and let them know what has happened, so we can see if there's any alternative methods that we can utilize. But again, it's usually a mixture of AP, SAT, and that's SAT1 and SAT2s, or the subjects, and then the SAT reasoning, and then the ACTs that a UK university will take. So go to their websites. There are reps like me. There's usually a rep for pretty much every university. Just Google the university name and USA, and you'll find usually A, their requirements, and B, their representative, so you can clarify anything that you need to with them.
Cool. And as a quick plug for the Irish universities, all of us have actually gone test flexible. So just in light of the fact that many of the testing centers were shut down or registrations were canceled, we have relaxed our requirements for ACT and SAT across the board. But again, there are going to be certain programs that still require those subject requirements, like Alana was talking about, like SAT2s or AP exams. Once again, just check with each university individually. Harry, do you want to, talk, maybe just say a quick thing about how the international universities abroad, or how maybe Franklin is dealing with ACT or SAT this year?
Absolutely. So thankfully, Franklin has been test optional for several years now, so we haven't had to be as reactionary as many other American institutions. And I believe most American institutions abroad are test optional, but it's important to always check with the admissions office at each institution. And I know that there are significant numbers of American institutions based in North America who are test optional now because of these certain circumstances where students can't take the SAT or the ACT this year.
Awesome. So last chance, everybody. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A. But if you weren't able to join us for the entire session, or you want to watch us again and again because you enjoyed it so much, or watch some of the other fantastic webinars that we've had over the course of the fall, head to our website and you can access all of those recordings. This one will be up probably definitely by Friday. Check back and then you can learn a little bit more. But we've also put each of our individual contact information here. So if you have individual questions about our universities or maybe our individual country systems, you can get in touch with us directly. Cool. Any last thoughts, words of wisdom, Alana and Harry?
I would just say, ask for help. Your counselors or, somebody around you in your network maybe has worked with the application and the essay or the personal statement outside of the US. So just make sure, again, you are getting that input with them and consulting them, because again, what we are looking for is a little bit different from what you may have been used to or told you need to prepare for. So again, just make sure you're getting that help where you need it from. Worst case scenario, again, please reach out to us if there is anything you need and we can guide you in that right direction. And ucas.com for us, so just ucas.com, has a lot of great resources for students on writing the essay and even getting started if you don't even know where to begin.
I suppose the last thing I'll say is just, once again, take your time with it, but also answer the question. So if you're picking a particular prompt for an American institution, make sure you're focusing on answering that particular question or prompt. And that way you're not shotgunning that same response out to different institutions for different questions, because that could also appear to be not your best foot forward, we'll just say.
Well, excellent. Thank you, guys. And thank you to all of us who were able to join us live this evening. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your Wednesday afternoon or evening to learn a little bit more about your options outside of the United States. So with that, I guess we'll close it off, and we'll see you in the new year. We wish you all very happy holidays and a safe and happy time with your families. Thanks for joining us.